The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. One of the most important parts of this novel is when Dorian Gray realizes that his wish may have come true. He's so afraid of getting old. He's so afraid of his health deteriorating, but not so much that. He's more afraid of losing what's aesthetic. Aestheticism has something to do with appearance. He doesn't want to lose his good looks, his youth. He starts to think about it. He starts to think about it. Page 93, for those of you watching this as an archive, and has a Bantam Classic edition, page 93. A feeling of pain crept over him as he thought of the desecration that was in store for the fair face on the canvas. Once, in boyish mockery of Narcissus, he had kissed, or feigned to kiss, those painted lips that now smiled so cruelly at him. Morning after morning he had sat before the portrait, wondering at its beauty, almost enamored of it. And this Narcissus reference, as I talked about before, for those of you watching another archive when I talked about the references of vanity that are included in some of the chapters of The Picture of Dorian Gray. And Narcissus was the ultimate vain person. Narcissus fell in love with his own image, jumped into that river or body of water, depending on where you hear these legends being told, jumped into the water and drowned. So there is a moral, which is a lesson to be learned from reading a story, from hearing of an urban or otherwise, or a different type of legend. So being so enamored of his own appearance, he thought it was somebody else, but it was himself. He drowned in self absorption. So I know that I can be a little self absorbed, but I'll tell you one thing, there is plenty of room in my life for other people who I love, and there is plenty of room in my life for acquiring knowledge, spreading knowledge, and intellect, not just looks. So I really resent that people will put me down as one of these people who only worries about looks, because that's not true. Yes, I want to be healthy. Yes, I want to be in good shape. I want to live longer. I don't smoke. I don't put, I don't cake my face with, I don't cake it on with makeup. I try to I try to be as healthy and as fit as possible. But I don't think I'm vain to the point of being a Dorian Gray. So I stopped to talk about the reference to Narcissus and the legend of the boy who fell in love with his own image in the water. For a moment, he thought of praying that the horrible sympathy that existed between him and the picture might cease. It had changed in answer to a prayer. Perhaps in answer to a prayer, it might remain unchanged. So here, there's something in Brazilian and Portuguese literature called Realismo fantástico. Realismo fantástico is a genre of literature. I may be pronouncing the word genre in a way that people might think, oh, that's not the way you pronounce it. But as long as you know that I'm pronouncing Genre, as long as you understand that, we're good. EIC for the win, English for International Communication. So, as I was saying, Realismo fantástico. Something happens, it's extraordinary, but as extraordinary as it is, there is no explanation in the novel, the short story, or poem, or whatever type of narrative is being presented to the reader. It is accepted as reality. If you translate realismo fantástico literally, it would be fantastic realism, which is a paradox in itself because something fantastic is something that's not real, something that's extraordinary. And then to call it real, what is that exactly? So In a way, in a way, as paradoxical as it is to call something realismo fantástico, that's what happens here because there is no explanation throughout the novel as to why Dorian Gray stays young and the painting starts to deteriorate. So I would rather say realismo fantástico as the correct way to describe this type of literature because it is the closest I've seen in all the materials I have studied and taught over the past 22 years since I became a teacher. I started as a student teacher at the age of 18, so it's actually more than 22 years that I've been teaching. And I've been reading and teaching and exploring these materials really deeply. So when I say I'm a language expert, I am an expert because I know the language, I know how to teach it, I know how to speak it. And I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else. I don't play an instrument. I suck at dancing. I suck at doing a lot of other things. I am not a talent in painting or sculpting or singing. I have two things in my life that I'm good at: literature and languages. By saying that, I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm not trying to be better than anybody. I'm acknowledging two things that I have. And look at these other people who have knowledge in music, knowledge in languages, knowledge in literature, knowledge in practical things, in mechanics, engineering, in all these other things. Look at those doctors, lawyers, architects. They have their thing, and I have mine. These two things, literature and languages. I really do not understand why people are so offended by my saying, I am good at languages and literature. Those are my passions. And yet, who that knew anything about life would surrender the chance of remaining always young, however fantastic that might be? Realismo fantástico. Something that is too extraordinary to be real, but is accepted in context, in the literary piece of art that you're examining. In that particular context, it is accepted as reality without any explanations. Like, for example, there is a book called A Hora dos Ruminantes. In this book, book written in Portuguese, a series of phenomena occurs in a small town. Out of nowhere, the city becomes invaded by different animals, and everybody is excited and scared at the same time, but it's accepted as reality without any explanation for it. If thought could exercise its influence upon a living organism, might not exercise an influence upon dead and inorganic things? Nay, without thought of conscious desire, might moods and passions, calling to in secret love or strange affinity? But the reason was of no importance. He would never again tempt by a prayer any terrible power. If the picture was to alter, it was to alter. That was all. Why inquire so closely into it? For there would be a real pleasure in watching it. He would be able to follow his mind into his secret places. This portrait would be to him the most magical of mirrors. So imagine this. He has this painting that tells him what he would look like if he were to get old, but he himself never gets old. So he wishes to maintain that fresh youth and beauty because he's obsessed with what he gets from it. The aestheticism in the novel, all that's aesthetic, is present in many different passages here. And sometimes not just in the physical beauty of the characters, like Sybil Vane, the woman who committed suicide because of Dorian Gray, or obviously because she had other problems, psychological, psychiatric problems. It's not quite clear, but it's indicated that she died because of him. So there is a lot of beauty in this woman, and she is of course, described as being this amazing beauty, there is also a lot of imagery that's given to us in descriptions in different passages in a novel, the beauty of nature, animals, flowers. So beauty is a constant presence. Everything that attracts the eye, that sort of beauty, is present throughout the novel. This portrait would be to him the most magical of mirrors. As it had revealed to him his own body, so it would reveal to him his own soul. And when winter came upon it, he would still be standing there where spring trembles on the verge of summer. When the blood crept from his face and left behind a pallid mask of chalk, he would keep the glamour of boyhood, young forever, forever young. The picture of Dorian Gray was published in 1890, so a lot of the references made here will perhaps not be current for the people who are living in this day and age and do not do research. Victorian times were completely different from what we experience today. Entertainment meant something completely different. They had plays, they had music. There was no internet. So can you imagine entertaining yourself just by going to the theater, having good conversation with friends? And I think one of the reasons why there is a lot of dialogue, powerful dialogue, in books that talk about these times when those gadgets were not available, it is because people talked more and they expressed themselves through speech, dialogue, and the written word as well. People wrote more letters, and there was a large production of written materials at a time where that was a form of entertainment. To some people, the sole form of entertainment. I am in love with literature. It is one of my passions, and for that matter, I want to share it. I'm trying to create archives for my YouTube channels, and this is the reason why I have my channel locked and I don't let people come in when I'm doing these presentations, so that I can solely focus on the topic at hand. Today, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, published in 1890. An excellent example of good British literature.